Bo, quit chewing on yourself. Bo, quit chewing on yourself.
Are we doing sound tests? Is this
Yeah,
is this the sound test?
Hi, Keat.
Oh no. It's sort of like non-committally rubbing her face. Oh, now she's tapping at the window.
Tap, tap, tap. Can you hear me from here?
Please get your butthole away from the mic. Okay.
Yeah, and particularly another thing that I really enjoy about Ray Gun Gothic is
It's gonna be one of those.
Welcome to Media Morsels, the podcast about creativity and the media that feeds it. I'm Jessica, character and aesthetic connoisseur.
I'm Jamie, plot guy and the summarizer.
And I'm Mitchie. Oh no, I forgot my stuff.
Vibe checker and scene chewer.
And I'm Mitchie, vibe checker and scene chewer.
And today, we watched one of Jamie's favorite movies.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, the table has been flipped. This is Forbidden Planet 1956, which I had to calculate because I'm not going to do that in my head, and is 45 years BS.
45 years before Shrek.
Yeah.
Ancient memes.
Truly. Back in the deep catalogs.
Yes.
The annals of time.
Oh, yes.
The annals of time.
Oh, great. Well, this movie definitely ranks among one of my favorites, and unlike a lot of Jess's picks, this is not an obscure movie. Quite the opposite, actually. It's a really foundational text in the sci-fi genre.
Yeah.
Now, is it as well known now? Maybe
Probably not. Like, I think if you said Forbidden Planet, if it came up in conversation, I don't think people would know exactly what you were talking about, but it's been mentioned enough that you'd have an idea of like, oh, that sounds like a, I don't know, like classic movie,
and if
sci-fi
you saw
movie.
the poster, you would know it.
Yeah. Or you would be able to be like, yes, this is part of the sci-fi early canon.
Yes.
But what you might not know is it's part of the defining canon.
Yes, absolutely. Were you going to say something?
I was just gonna say, it sounds like, a really weird off-brand version of Planet of the Apes.
I mean, yeah, you could make that assumption. And really, it turns out that a lot of sci-fi movies that came after this owe a bunch to this movie.
Well, not just movies.
Well,
it's
movies,
really
television,
media in general. Movies, television, books. I mean, I'm sure books also influenced Forbidden Planet, but the specific stylistic way of depicting things on book covers and such.
I'm pretty sure comic books themselves around this time frame inspired this movie.
Well, and vice versa. I'm sure that some of the visual choices they made in this fed back into comics. So part of the reason that we wanted to do this was I haven't had a script flip yet.
Yeah.
And part of the reason was Mitch and Jess rightfully brought up that we haven't really defined Ray Gun Gothic. We mentioned it twice in our Alien Madness May.
Yeah, we keep saying it in association with Earth Girls Are Easy and Mars Attacks, but we realized we haven't given you, the listener, a clear idea of what that is.
Like an actual definition.
Yes.
And as a media criticism podcast, we felt like we were kind of falling down on that, so Mitch has prepared a statement.
Allow me to introduce you to the tome, which is just my laptop folded in half because it does weird stuff like that.
Allow Mitch to introduce you to Ray Gun Gothic.
What is Ray Gun Gothic? This is an artistic style that uses color, shapes, and other poppy aesthetics. It was created in the 1950s and 60s to showcase an optimistic, utopian dream in which all humanity's problems simply disappeared. Ray Gun Gothic's key features involve space travel and socialistic equality for all creatures, humans, and robots, where there is plenty to share with the rest of the universe, in style, and with go-go boots. Visual cues involve eye-catching and poppy colors, shape geometry that resembles boomerangs and kidney beans, with neon lighting and cheesy special effects. And orbs.
So many orbs.
So many orbs. A lot of rounded shapes.
Yes. Well, I would say, like, a lot of it pulls on, like, automotive design from
Yeah.
the 40s and 50s.
Yes.
I would also say that I think the word that you're looking for is egalitarian, an egalitarian society.
Yes.
Although
That's socialism.
that's the aspiration. In practice, this movie is not very egalitarian.
There's also a lot of free-form electricity, Tesla coils, and those fun Thunderball orbs you can find at Spencer's.
I used to have one of those.
I always
It's
wanted
still in
one.
my parents' bathroom, actually.
I'm pretty sure I have one somewhere stashed too. Key examples include the Jetsons, the original Star Trek, the Fallout games, minus the dystopian Armageddon, and this movie.
I think it's important to note that Star Trek: The Original Series definitely took huge
It cribbed a lot of notes from this movie.
inspiration from Forbidden Planet, and I think you raise a good point about Fallout.
Oh, yeah.
I want to say, is it ray gun gothic if it's not in space?
Well, so I think technically Fallout falls under something called atom punk.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
they're related concepts.
yeah, diesel punk, atom punk, ray gun gothic all pull on a similar visual language of that like 30s, 40s, 50s automotive design with sleek shapes and all of that.
Back when design actually was fucking
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I will say Diesel Punk was actually more inspired by World War I and II because
Yeah.
it
Well,
was
yeah.
more like gasoline and more
Yeah,
kind
but
of like
like the visual
not,
does.
not so poppy colors.
Yeah, but a lot of like the shape language is
Yes.
shared between all of these because you got missile head shapes, you got your boomerangs, your orbs, your kidney beans, big fins
Big
on
fins.
things,
And the bubble head aesthetic. The
the bubble helmets.
yeah. Bubbles everywhere, honestly, which I really enjoy. In the last like 30 some years, how we imagine future technology is very sleek
Very minimalistic.
and minimalistic. Fuck that. I hate that. Give me buttons. Give me bubbles. Give me bright colors and fins.
None of the J.J. Abrams Star Trek reboot where everything looks like it was designed by Apple.
Yeah.
Well, I was about to say that, like, Apple's future essentially started off with those, really cool, funky EMAC colored machines where you could go and see through the plastic and, like, it has
Yeah, that was fun.
that has that kind of aesthetic.
The Poppy Maximalist.
We've gotten away from
yeah.
that. Now we have black device and white device, like, and they're just
And there's
always
no-
the same.
And it's like the
There's-
monolith from 2001,
Yeah.
where it's just like a unified shape with one button.
Well, and there's no tactile
or no
elements.
button, depending on what you pick up.
Yeah. And I don't know. For me, the tactility, the shapiness, those are
Well,
those are things I want.
there's a reason-
They're appealing to the eye.
Yeah, there's a reason Retrotech is
Making
coming back in
yeah,
right now,
a
because
comeback.
we're not the only ones that feel this way.
Yeah. I just love me some atom punk and some ray gun gothic. I
Yeah.
just love it so much.
That's why so many works lean on it, because it is a lot of fun.
Yeah, and particularly another thing that I really enjoy about ray gun gothic, it's a utopian aspiration, a utopian vision of the future, but it's also not without its challenges.
Yes.
But the challenges are like adventure challenges.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, yes, we've solved all the problems like inequality, food scarcity, and energy scarcity, and all that stuff.
But we have,
But
have
guess
we solved
what?
the weird space monsters?
Yeah, there's still a whole literal universe of wonder and mystery and challenges out there. And that's the future that I want to look forward to, is one where we've solved a lot of these actually solvable problems and move on to the next stage where we can focus on, I guess, understanding the wild and amazing universe that we live in and tackling it together.
Speaking of moving on to the next stage, we haven't actually explained this movie yet, so let's go ahead and get into the appetizer round, where we explain our first contact. So I should probably start off this appetizer round as the, I guess, kind of host this time. I do not remember the first time I saw this movie. I have had a long-standing love affair with mid-century science fiction movies. And so this is lost somewhere in the blur of me binging those.
Yeah.
In and amongst such classics as The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms and The Blob. Again, I adore this era of movies, faults and all, and there are faults.
Have you watched Night of the Lepus?
I haven't, but it's on my
gosh.
list. Have you?
No, I haven't, but
okay,
I want to watch it.
It is in a slightly different genre than the high-tech space weirdness that is described in these other films, but it definitely falls squarely into pulp sci-fi bullshit. Brief aside, Night of the Lepus, giant bunnies attack a town.
Yeah.
Except they achieve the special effects by just regular-sized bunnies knocking over dollhouses.
Oh my god, how come I haven't heard this yet?
Well, we can all watch it together.
Anyway, I am an absolute sucker for pulp classics. This movie was somewhere in there.
Pulp genre movie posters, their game's so strong.
Yeah.
You can't beat it.
Nope, I agree with that.
And I really cannot overstate how much just that entire oeuvre of films and other related media have influenced me and the way that I deploy my own personal hammometer to my own work. I adore it. It does have this sort of like optimistic view of the future, even in sort of the more like horror oriented things.
Yeah.
Like, but our can-do attitude can take care of
we
it.
can do it.
And now, this is mid-century media, so...
It has its faults.
It has many
Big
faults.
faults.
Racism and sexism is along with that. It is, unfortunately, part and parcel with it.
I think the racism in this one it's not like blatant racism,
Well,
it's more...
The racism is in that there are no minority members in the cast.
Everybody is white. The only people in space are white, and most of them are men. There's
White Protestant
literally...
men, because this was made in 1956, and that was their utopian vision of the future.
And there's
All
literally...
that white bread.
And there's literally one woman, and she is there to be an object to be desired.
We'll get into that more.
And the sexism and misogyny here is
off
blatant.
the chain, y'all. Like, if I was a little bit more sensitive to it, it would be unwatchable. But because I have such an adoration for the cheesy sci-fi aspect, it offers just enough to make it worth it.
I think it's one of those things where you need to go in understanding
the era that it was in.
Yeah.
And it approached this uncritically at the time.
And that sucks. But it's still an important, groundbreaking movie.
Yeah, in terms of writing, music, visuals, special effects, like, yeah. So, First Contact.
Well, for me, this is only my second time seeing it, and I think this is the first time I've seen it all the way through.
Was the first time also with me?
Yes, it was also with you. We were just watching it one night.
This truly is a table flip.
Yeah, and honestly... I don't know. I can't help but really enjoy it, at least aesthetically, because it reminds me so much of the original series of Star Trek. Now that, that was a huge...
foundational text for you.
Yes. A huge inspiration for me. I freaking love Star Trek, the original series, and also the movies that came after. I honestly love most Star Trek in general. Because this movie reminds me so strongly of the original series, and there's a reason for that, because this inspired much of the original series.
Gene Roddenberry specifically cited this as a major source of inspiration.
Yeah, and you can see it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it for that alone. There were also a lot of clever ways that they talked about, like, the science of traveling through space.
Yeah.
And I respect that too. I always like it when sci-fi movies try to make sense.
Have some kind of logical underpinning.
Yes. But I think the first time we watched this, I got most of the way through and then I was like, I'm so tired. And I went to bed, so I actually didn't know how it ended. So this was my first time seeing it all the way through.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I enjoyed it aesthetically. I don't necessarily... Like, if you had just had me watch this blind, not knowing anything about it, I would have been like, oh, okay. It's like an extended version of a TOS episode.
It really is.
Star Trek, the original series episode, but like not one of my favorite ones. Mm-hmm. But knowing how it essentially founded the entire look and sound of science fiction in cinema, in television, that raises it in my eyes. I really appreciate understanding the cinematic history. That's probably my appetizer round.
Well, my first, I guess, viewing of this movie was probably 4 months ago.
The same time as Jess's first viewing of this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you also fell asleep?
I also fell asleep.
This movie has like that 1950s pacing, which is really weird by our standards.
Yes.
It's laborious.
Laborious.
Laborious is the word that I would use to describe the pacing of this film. Anyway, that's pretty much all I got. That's the first time I've watched, original Star Trek here and there, and like I see the bits and pieces.
Yeah.
But that's about it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So with all that taken care of, I think it's time for the summarizing. All right, take it away, babe. You're kind of the captain of... You're
captain of this ship.
You're the skipper of this UFO. Of this flying saucer.
Well, that thank you, love. That provides an awesome transition. So we do open with a flying saucer, but it's not crewed by aliens, it's crewed by humans.
Which I thought was such an interesting choice.
Yes.
Like, we're the ones in the weird flying saucers.
So... before I get into the meat of the summary here, a brief tangent on the fact that, in addition to having a love of mid-century science fiction, I have a love of mid-century science. Because Cold War science had a bunch of weird shit going on where they were just trying stuff and the government was funding it just as a blank check. We tried to build flying saucers. There was a saucer-shaped hovercraft big enough to fit one person at
Really?
Yes, it didn't.
How high did it hover?
Not terribly. It sort of goes into the same category as the Davy Crockett RPG launcher.
What?
Okay, so the Davy
We were supposed to be summarizing Forbidden Planet.
Hey, I said this, I was going to go on a tangent before I got into it. And this episode is my baby, so I'm going to gush a little bit. The Davy Crockett was a infantry-operated mortar that was atomic.
So it's like the Fat Man from Fallout.
Except the blast radius of the weapon was larger than the range.
So a MIRV.
So the person firing it would have gotten hit.
You're only going to fire it once.
Exactly. So, crazy mid-century science. That's a fun little fact for you. Look it up. There's a whole bunch of other crazy shit going on. Also, super unethical shit.
Oh my God.
Content warning for that.
Yeah.
But back to this movie. So we have humans of the 23rd century flying through deep space in a flying saucer. They are going on a mission to check up on a colony on Altair 4 that they've lost contact with. When they finally get there are only 2 surviving members of the original colony ship, a scientist and his beautiful daughter.
Mm-hmm. The one woman.
Yes.
The one woman.
I'll let you guess at the ethics of the scientist. The original crew of that colony ship disappeared under mysterious circumstances, and oh, what's that? History seems to be repeating itself.
Yeah. And the scientist does not wish to leave. He does not wish to leave his planet.
Or his daughter, for that matter.
Yeah.
It is forbidden!
It's
the forbidden planet! Dun dun dun!
You know what I want? I want a Muppet movie version
Oh my.
of Forbidden Planet, babe.
God.
Babe.
I would kill a man to see
Babe.
this.
Muppets.
Well, so you may have seen on our Instagram account, or maybe not, we may or may not have a mascot for the show now.
Yeah.
Be expecting more content related to that soon.
I guess I'll have to just check out our social media in order to find out more.
On Instagram at Media Morsels, or our YouTube channel
Yes.
at Goblin Booth Productions, which is us. We're Goblin Booth Productions. Let's go ahead
To the main course!
You take the lead on this one.
I will take the lead on this.
But I will
one.
probably interject from time to
You
time.
can't help yourself. I wouldn't expect anything else. This movie was the first to have an entirely electronic soundtrack, not just of sci-fi movies, but of any kind of movie ever.
Oh.
Which is pretty awesome. It was a husband and wife team, and they had to throw the soundtrack together in 3 months.
What did it sound like?
Like, a lot of, like, very, 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 very early synthesizer sounds.
Well, and anybody who has watched Star Trek the original series...
They definitely pulled on this as a reference for that, among other things.
Yeah, I mean, it's really quite strongly.
Well, yeah, so you've got, the square-jawed commander of the ship, who's definitely not the template for Kirk.
It was totally not.
Their little belt-mounted communicators, and the way that they use naval terminology for the crew members.
Skipper, bosun.
Well, they don't really use those so much in the original series.
They do in later Star Treks, though. They kind of, like, play in
Well, yes,
some of them do.
they're, yes, a lot of terms for the ship
Commander,
are...
Admiral.
Yeah,
et cetera,
similar.
et cetera,
But,
yeah.
but I wouldn't say, like, bosun or skipper are common in Star
Yada,
Treks.
yada, yada.
I just think of Gilligan's Island.
Well, yeah.
Gilligan's Island. In space!
Honestly, that would be bitchin'.
You can't do it with this movie, though, because there's only one woman.
Yeah, we'll get into that. Honestly, my primary beef with this movie is not just that there's only one woman, but the way that she's treated. Good lord.
Yeah,
But we'll
I'll have stuff to say about that.
I might let you lead on that, in fact. This movie features Robbie the Robot, which
Yes!
is probably one of the most iconic characters in cinema, even if you don't know his name.
And iconic robot designs ever.
Yes. So the Protectrons from the Fallout series basically just copy Robbie the Robot.
Yeah.
What's fun is he also has the 3 laws of robotics, but they don't really specify
Well,
what
yeah,
it is.
they don't state it out loud, but
It's
like,
sort of a nascent version of the 3 laws of robotics.
yeah, well, it may have been, because I think Asimov had already written that down prior to this film.
Yeah, I mean, that's conjecture.
Anyway.
We don't know for sure because
Yeah.
we haven't looked it up.
But, he's like, you can't harm humans, you must follow their directives, but you shouldn't follow their directives if that means harming a human.
Yeah.
So, he's basically got the 3 laws down.
Yeah.
He's super cool. He is the first robotic character in film to be depicted as more than just sort of a metal box that performs a function. He has a personality. He has a sense of
does.
humor.
Mm-hmm.
He is like a fully fleshed out side character in this film, and frankly, my favorite character.
Yeah. All you robophiliacs out there, or people who enjoy android or cyborg characters, I feel like we owe our gratitude to Robbie the Robot. Yes.
Well, and one of the characters in the film, Loki, seems like he might want to fuck the robot.
Yeah.
We'll get there. So we are in the 23rd century. We're in deep space. This movie is also the first that featured humans traveling into deep space, like not just to other planets in our solar system. It also featured the first instance of faster than light travel in film science fiction.
Yeah.
The way that they work around decelerating out of that,
Yeah, this is so clever.
it's really clever. It's probably the most clever science part of the film. They have to get into these, obviously the template for Star Trek's transporter.
Yeah, these buffers or something.
Thing. They have to hop in there and like get rendered into energy.
Dematerialized.
Yeah, while they're coming out of light speeds, the inertia doesn't kill them all.
And then they can rematerialize and go about the rest of their work. But that was so
It was really neat.
clever.
Yeah.
And yeah, definitely Star Trek got its transporters
Directly from this.
from
The
this.
effect is so similar. The crew is approaching Altair 4, and they're not noticing any signs of life or civilization on the planet? And they're like, well, gee, that's weird. It's been 16 years since this colony went silent.
I think it's 20. It's like 19 or 20.
Yeah, like a while. And they're like, golly gee willikers, that's weird. And then they get a radio transmission from the surface, and it's Dr. Morbius. No, not that one.
It's Morbin time.
It's Morbin time. And he's like, no, don't come down here. Leave me the fuck alone, basically. I'm a crotchety old man, and I'm fine. Leave
Get
me
off
alone.
my lawn!
Yeah, it's
And-
the ultimate get off my lawn.
Specifically, he says, I won't take any responsibility for
what
what
happens
happens
to you
if you land.
I wash my hands of this weirdness.
Basically. But, you know, they got a job to do. They land anyway. The planet's got a breathable atmosphere, so they land their flying saucer. They disembark, and they notice, like, a big, dusty rooster tail in the distance. And who should show up to greet them but a robot?
Robbie!
Our friend Robbie in a space truck shows up. That's only big enough to hold 3 people. So we have our template Kirk, template Spock, and template McCoy hop on.
I don't think so.
Okay, well, there's a template McCoy at least.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Maybe, if you squint.
Yes.
But there's definitely not a Spock.
Well, I
like-
feel like the Doctor in this is sort of like if you smushed McCoy and Spock together.
Yeah.
Because he is the cool, like, rational head, but he also has weird outbursts.
I feel like the
Yeah.
third of their trio is kind of like a
Chekhov.
Yeah, I was about to say kind of like
'Cause
a,
he's a little
sort
pervy.
of creepy, horny Chekhov.
Chekhov was creepy and horny.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You said the same thing twice.
creepy, horny Chekhov.
Yeah.
Yeah. Instead of Spock. So they hadn't quite like hit upon that, you know, having
The formula.
like the formula of like the bronze, the brains, and the like
gumption.
the gumption. Yeah, the
Yeah.
heart guy. They hadn't quite. They weren't there yet.
Naturally, the captain is among the party that gets to go on the robot space truck. And they are transported to the one visible building on the surface of the planet where they are greeted by Dr. Morbius, who looks...
It's Morbin time.
You can't say that every
time he shows up, it's Morbin time.
And he does not look at all like Mirror Universe Spock.
No, not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all.
He's not dressed in all black with a slicked down goatee. Oh no, he's definitely not the villain of this film.
It kind of reminds me of the captain's ghost from Ghost of Mrs. Mirror.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, if he just wore a turtleneck instead of whatever weird little cravat thing he's wearing
That
throughout.
one's a little bit more hammy.
Yeah, and a little bit hotter, honestly.
Yeah, a
but
little younger.
Oh, well.
we're not getting into that. It's like this Frank Lloyd Wright ass house with like open concept, huge ginormous windows out onto the space gardens. Morbius is just like, oh, I'm totally fine. Here, check out all the cool shit I can do that I'm going to display to you in a way that's not at all threatening to your life.
Yeah, I mean, this guy, he is such
Everything he does is a power play.
Yeah, it's a power play. He's a shady bitch. Like,
Yeah, it's...
he's constantly low-key threatening their lives and then being like, ha ha ha, you thought I was threatening your life.
Here, let me give this pistol to my robot and tell him to shoot you.
Yeah.
Oh, look, he can't do it because of his logic circuits. Ha ha ha. But I made you think I was going to kill you.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny? And he almost convinces them to just leave entirely. And then they're like, well, we need to check in on the rest of the crew of your colony ship. And here he sort of gives some of the backstory of, well, they all died under mysterious circumstances, torn apart right after having a vote to leave the planet, which me and my wife definitely did not want to do, and I was very upset about, but I had nothing to do with their deaths. But for some reason, me and my family were also totally immune to the force that tore them all apart. This is not suspicious.
Yeah. And then, right after he describes all this, and they're like, oh, okay, well, you know...
That sure is weird.
That sure is weird. We're gonna need to radio back to Earth to get further instructions.
Yeah, because, like, this wasn't part of the mission plan.
And that's gonna take a lot of doing because Earth's really far away. Who should show up?
But Alta.
But Alta. Altera.
Mm-hmm.
Morbius's daughter. And she's blonde and blue-eyed and cute as a button. She's probably 19.
19 or so. She has the look of a Hitchcock girl, the platinum blonde with the light blue eyes. that sort of, like, rectangular face.
She's wearing her, little mini dress.
The miniskirts of her outfits got this movie banned in Spain until the 60s, because it was so scandalous for her to show so much thigh, which, frankly, she does look great, because her wardrobe is spectacular. And she's like, oh, what's this? The only young men that I'm not related to that I've ever seen in my entire life. Hello!
Girl, she has game already. She did not need...
She's been studying them Earth texts to figure out how to flirt, I guess.
Maybe reading romance novels. I don't know. But she shows up and she's very, instantly flirting with all the men. But at the same time, very ignorant.
Well,
which I don't really...
It's kind of like innocent flirting, because, she hasn't had contact with any other human beings. And the crew is, frankly, being real gross about it.
Oh my god, yeah. Yeah, and we'll get to that.
Just, cloying flirting, where they're just all up in her biz. The whole movie.
Yeah, as soon as she appears, they are fucking on her.
Just slobbering. It's terrible.
Like flies to honey,
Oh, yeah.
It's like, well, what else are you gonna do with, what 18 men and...
we'll get to that.
Yeah. And so they're explaining their predicament, and saying, it's going to take us, 10 or more days to reassemble our ship into a configuration that can make a space radio to call Earth and figure out what to do. Mr. Morbentime is having none of it. He's like, well, tell me what you need, and I'll have Robbie fabricate it for you if it'll get you the fuck off my planet faster.
Because Robbie can fabricate pretty much anything that he is, exposed to.
I still don't know how that works.
You're not supposed to. It's like the Star Trek fabricator. They never explain how that works
the replicators.
It's like 3D printer, but if it was magic.
Yeah, it's essentially... He analyzes the molecules, then he uses, I guess, basic elements to reconfigure and recreate those molecules.
Bada bing, bada boom.
Replicates, 3D prints the material.
Goodness. Speaking of magic, so I had a thought whenever I was watching some of these special effects, because they're still really gorgeous.
So there's hand animated lighting effects for the lasers and stuff.
Hand animated effects for lasers, smoke trails, for whenever something gets kind of blown up. Mm-hmm. And I was like, why does this feel so familiar? And I'm like, wait, it's fantasy aesthetics.
It's Fantasia.
Yeah. Well,
it's the same.
Well, especially when the monster shows up for the first time visually, getting caught in that energy barrier where you see the silhouette. That's very Chernobog on the Mountain, lighted silhouettes and sort of pastel-y renderings.
There's a monster. Spoilers.
We're in the spoiler section of the film. And it's only kind of a monster, actually. We'll get there. They go back to the ship. And they're like, okay, we'll wait for you to deliver the stuff we need tomorrow. That night, a mysterious force manages to slip past their guards into the ship and sabotage their equipment. What possibly could have happened? Who knows? The following morning, the captain's an asshole and reprimands the guards on duty, even though the invader was invisible. And
he does not believe them.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know, I mean,
in fairness, that's pretty sus, but also, you're on an alien planet. You don't know what's here.
Yeah.
Maybe have a little trust in your men.
And he's already said something while they were talking to Morbius before they came down to the planet. When they heard his voice initially, he asked the radio engineer, he's like, oh, is it human voices? So I'm like, that implies...
They were expecting there may have been aliens.
Yeah, that you guys have met aliens before of some kind, that you've heard in human voices.
Or that they were at least open to the likelihood of it happening.
Yeah.
Next morning, he's reprimanding the guys. His second in command's being a real douche waffle about Alta, because he's like, well, I want to get with the girl.
Yeah, he's been on her from the moment.
It's the worst. But she and Robbie show up to first deliver the materials, and second, for her to, gawk at everything that's happening.
To gawk at the menfolk.
Well, and it's probably the most interesting thing that's happened on the planet since she's been born.
Yeah, literally the only other human that she has ever seen is her father.
Well, and also interestingly, both Alta and Robbie have this fun habit of respecting the letter of a phrase, if not the spirit of it.
Yeah, of Morbius's commands.
Yeah, because, she just says, well, my father told me not to go anywhere near the ship, but I'm not that close. Which, honestly, get it. This is great. And then the second in command sort of like takes her off into the space forest for private kissing lessons, which...
Yeah, he basically is like, oh, well, kissing is very, very important for your health. Like, you can't really be healthy if you haven't kissed.
Don't do it. And she's
if you
like,
don't do it.
That sounds silly. Why would you do it? And he's like, well, just let me show you.
Yeah, he's like, it's stimulating. And
well, and as gross as this scene is, after he kisses her, Alta's just like, well, I didn't feel stimulated at all. Get his ass, girl.
Yeah. No, he kisses her a few times, and she's just kind of like, okay, well,
she just nothings it.
Yeah, she's
not
like,
good, not bad, just indifferent.
Okay, yeah. Well, and here's the part that gets, like, really creepy.
The captain shows up.
Well, no, before that. I mean, this whole thing is creepy.
Well,
like,
yeah.
And the captain saw this guy taking her off, but he went to deal with some, science-y duties before he went and followed them. But he was clearly already kind of concerned. What's his face? I can't remember his name.
Doesn't really matter.
Is Jerry, I think?
Maybe.
Jerry. One of those, 1950s names. Jerry is kissing her, and he's, trying to show her how to kiss properly. And, yeah, she's not really responding to it. And when it's clear that she's just not really into it...
Well, he gets mad at her.
He gets mad at her. He's like, are you giving me the treatment? And it looks like, you can tell,
well,
he
is threatening.
Yeah, he has flipped from being all charming to... Yeah,
it's threatening body language.
It's thunder rumbling before
it is uncomfortable.
The storm breaks.
To watch.
Yeah, and she has no idea the kind of danger that she's in because she's never had to experience this before. Mm-hmm. She has no idea why he's upset. But then
around this time, the captain shows up and basically tells second in command to piss off.
Yeah.
Which good, yes, that's what you should do.
So first you're like, yay, he's
come to the rescue.
He's come to the rescue and he's kicked him out, and then
he's basically just blaming her for flouncing around in a miniskirt and distracting all the men.
Yeah, essentially he's like, hey, look, you just can't be around here dressed like he was like, what do you expect was going to happen? Which she still doesn't know what he's talking about. He's like, well, what do you expect was going to happen when you're around here dressed like that? You need to go get dressed in something that's real clothing or whatever. And she's just like, well, why?
I designed this myself.
What's wrong with that? And he's like, look, he does have a good point in saying, I have 18 perfectly physically fit men on my ship who are their average age is 24 or mean age is 24 who have been in space with no women for 378 days. And what he should have said next was, knowing that, I am going to do my best to
make sure they don't
do anything to you, and to make sure they do not bother you. And if you have any trouble with them, I need you to come tell me right away. Mm-hmm. But instead he
blames her.
He blames her. He's like, you're wearing that, and you're just asking for something bad to happen to you.
Yeah.
I was just like, you fucker.
But that's such a turn on.
Well, it really isn't for her. It genuinely pisses her off.
Well, I don't know. I would say it pisses her off, but she's also intrigued.
Yeah.
She's intrigued by the conflict. She's like, oh, the passion, between us, we're two wills colliding, butting heads or whatever. So so in that very 1950s way, somehow this is appealing to her.
Yeah, but
and she's like,
she and Robbie leave after this.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, during that process.
During
that, we
have a much better scene.
Yeah, we have a much better scene between Cook and Robbie.
Cookie.
So Cook is pretty much the comic relief in conjunction with Robbie. Yeah, no, they're great. So Cook wants to get drunk as all you know, sailors
apparently
want
he's
to do.
an alcoholic.
And his stock's
Also,
running low.
it's so funny because he's the one who first complains about
The lack of women.
Yeah, he's like, oh man, we're going to this planet with like no booze, no women, no like card tables. And then the first thing he does when Robbie shows up is he's like, is it a boy or a girl? He's like asking.
It's like, bruh, do you want to fuck the robot?
Yeah, he's like, I mean, because if it's a girl, then I'll find a way. And
Any port
and then-
in a storm.
and then Robbie is,
USB port.
and then Robbie is basically just like, neither apply to me. And I'm like, yes,
Agender
agender
representation.
icon. Although, you know, we shouldn't say that all agender people are
Non-human.
or
Yeah,
like,
that's a whole-
you know, comparing them to non-humans.
Yeah, but
Also as a
robots are sick as hell.
robots are fucking sick.
The chef has heard that Robbie can replicate things from formulas, so he's like, hey, I've got this bit of hooch, can you help me out here? And Robbie's like, would you like 60 gallons? And they're immediately best friends.
Yeah, no, Robbie just chugs like half a bottle, belches, does his...
Yeah, he robot belches.
He robot belches. I love Robbie. His design is so good because he has like cassette tape like speech patterns.
Well, it's almost like he's got that jukebox.
Yeah, and whenever he speaks, like, something clicks over and he says something new.
Yeah. And it's clear that they assumed at this point that a lot of data would be stored in the future, would be
Like
stored on
magnetic
tapes.
Yeah.
Which is very cool, but not how it turned out.
yeah, which is unfortunate.
So that provides very fortunate relief from this other, frankly, unwatchable scene.
Yeah, and it's clear that at the time when this was filmed, like you are supposed to be like, that Jerry, he's a creep, but you're supposed to
Think the captain's right.
think the captain has a good point, and it's like,
Yeah.
no.
Turns out, no, actually.
that the captain is, you know, doing the right thing by, I was going to say dressing her down.
Not a great choice of words.
but by, like, he's doing her a favor by telling her to cover up all that skin. And, like, she goes in and talks to Robbie the robot after this encounter, and she's like, Robbie, she has claimed that she designs all her own clothing. Robbie designs all the clothing, because she's like, Robbie, I need you to make a new dress for me. And Robbie's like,
another
again.
one. Yeah. Again, Robbie has the best comedic lines.
And
Like, whenever she was first trying to summon him, like, she beamed, and what took you so long to get here?
Oh, God.
I was giving myself an oil change.
I was giving
he
myself
said,
an oil job.
Okay, hold on. Let me
Oil job.
That's
let me
right,
let me
yeah.
rewind back.
Yeah.
So she is going to order a new dress from Robbie. And so there's this little device that's sort of like, I don't know, like an Alexa or something, but like a hand-activated...
A hand-activated soap dispenser.
Yeah,
You wave your
where-
hand over it and something happens.
Yeah, she waves her hand over it, and it's supposed to summon Robbie. And Robbie takes a grand total of
30 seconds.
15 seconds to respond to her, and she's so impatient. She's like, Robbie, I beamed and beamed for you, because that's what they call this summoning thing. Where were you? And he's like, sorry, mistress, or whatever. I was giving myself an oil job. And we're just like,
Oh, what? Are you gonna give the cook an oil job too?
Oh
I mean, cooks need oil.
It just
The phrasing.
The phrasing.
It's great.
And also, like, he's like, yeah, I don't know, like, even the way, like, the circumstances are like, sorry, I was, like, masturbating in the bathroom. What do you want
Did you
now?
wash your hands after that?
Yeah, it's like,
Anyway, so she's like, oh, Robbie, I need you to make me another dress. It has to be, it has to cover everything, my legs and my arms, but it must be very light and buttery soft cloth.
and covered in star sapphires.
Covered in star sapphires. He's like, well, I can't do star sapphires. Would you like diamonds or emeralds? And she's like, oh, I guess those will do. Emeralds. So she's taking what the captain said and being like, he wants me to cover up, so I'll do it because it will please him. I don't know. It's like,
I will do it more ostentatiously.
Yeah, basically.
see, it would be funny if she did it more ostentatiously.
Yeah.
She didn't.
I'm gonna put on an even shorter skirt.
Yeah, or if she had created, like, the most sexually alluring but covered up dress in existence. Like if she like had like a sheer dress that like covered everything,
or she just comes back
or just
in, like,
skin tight. I
or
don't know.
she just comes back in like a Carmen Miranda number with like, you know, a little halter top and the fruit hat.
Yeah, if she had done that, I would have been like, this is great. She's thumbing her nose at him, but no, this is all
She's trying
designed
to appeal to him.
to appease and appeal to him, which I'm like, and this is good. This is what good
Christian women do.
Yeah.
All these dudes look the same, too.
They really do,
Yeah.
except the cook, who is the comic relief, has a different uniform.
He's kind of
is-
scrungly
Yeah.
a little bit.
which makes him interesting, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
but there's some like class dynamic issues there too because
There
of the
is.
way that he speaks,
Yeah,
and
he's like the redneck, and
The fact that everybody kind of treats him not really great. Because
Yeah.
yeah, he's the butt of the jokes.
Yeah.
He always gets reprimanded.
well, and
Well, except when he doesn't get reprimanded for doing something that was actually bad.
like getting
later.
super drunk on the job.
Yeah.
This character was written after the fact, after the original write of this script, to add comic relief.
Thank
so,
God.
if he feels a little bit out of place, that's probably why. But yeah, I feel like he is necessary because, again, the pacing in this film
It's
it is
weird.
A lot of 1950s sci-fi and a lot of 1950s films in general have pacing that, for a modern viewer, is weird.
Yeah.
And it falls into a lot of the tropey sci-fi stuff, because it established a lot of the tropey sci-fi
Yeah.
stuff, of really over-explaining a lot of the concepts, the lore that's going
Yeah,
on.
it's very exposition-y.
Yes.
And which it's not necessarily bad to tell people what's happening, but
No.
the way that it's delivered is, by our standards, a bit clumsy, but it also feels very Star Trek the original series.
Yes.
And when you just kind of needed to move things
To get to a
along,
point.
sometimes you can't avoid an exposition dump.
It's very techno-babbly.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
It
Reverse the
loves-
polarities!
Uh-huh. It loves its technobabble. But I think it's this night that the crew goes back to the ship, and the unseen presence comes back again.
Yeah, they install like these weird, insurmountable chest-high
yeah, these
laser
Energy
grids,
grid.
Yeah.
which you could theoretically just step over.
Okay, it's like chest high. You'd have to jump over
Okay.
it. But a sufficiently athletic person could just jump over it.
Yeah.
But they sort of demonstrate what it does, because you have to do that with new tech by, like, tossing a tumbleweed in it and it gets
Yeah,
vaporized.
Of course.
There's something strange happens to this laser electric fence. It has like a glitch or something. They're like, gee, that's weird. And then
It like
just complete-
fires. It's like, and then it stops.
They just don't think about it again. And then we have our unseen force sneak onto the ship and rip one of the crew members limb from limb.
You also forgot the whole footprints in the set.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you mean when Jesus carried me down the beach? Footprints in the sand? That
What?
poem that's like in every grandma's bathroom?
No.
Never mind.
Like there was only one set of footprints in the sand, and that's when I know Jesus carried me, because Jesus is always with me.
We don't need to linger on this reference, since it didn't land. But there is a really neat visual effect. There's a lot of neat visual effects. First of all, like, the flickering laser fence, pretty neat. Especially since they had to do each of those frames by hand. Holy shit. But then they have this cool thing to express that there's an invisible monster walking around, where there's a shot of the sand leading up to the ship, and there's just indents emerging in the sand in the shape of, like, a weird clawed foot. And then it approaches the gangplank steps to the ship, and the steps are deforming underneath the invisible weight, and it's all like really, really cool, and that's what makes this movie watchable again. After all the gross sexism, then whatever happens, there's a scream from inside the ship, and somebody gets put through a meat grinder that is unseen, because this is
The
1954.
1950s, so they're not going to show that.
Smeared in the command deck. Body count 1.
Yes. This is our first death. Basically cut immediately to the next morning, where they've already done a plaster cast of the footprint, because they're explaining, guy on board died, here's the plaster cast of this unnatural thing that couldn't possibly exist, because, like, it's avian, it's terrestrial, it's a quadruped, it's a biped. What is this thing? It can't possibly
It
be
defies
real.
all our understanding of
Evolution.
humans and other alien species in the galaxy or whatever.
You mean to say that alien creatures look weird?
Well, I think it's to establish the reveal later on that this is a creature basically made out of dreams and or nightmares. It doesn't have to make sense because it's dictated by imagination.
Whoa.
They go back to Morbin Times place to be like, well, what the fuck is going on here? And actually, I think we might have missed a plot beat where they'd already gone yesterday after the ship had been tampered with to question Morbius and be like, okay, well, you're the only other person on this planet. What happened to our equipment? And he's just like, well, I didn't do anything.
And they break into his office. He is nowhere to be found when they first show up. And so they go into his office. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, this...
Hold on. Before this, they go over to his house to interrogate him and see what the fuck's going on. But then at least the captain gets distracted by Alta, who is skinny dipping in her pool outside, which
he doesn't know she's skinny dipping at first.
Yeah, he doesn't know she's skinny dipping at first, but he does leap at the opportunity to see her again. But anyway, she has no idea that skinny dipping
idea of
is
modesty.
Provocative or anything, which I was like, I
she's just
don't know, that's a bit weird though. I don't know if I'd be
Around your
skinny
dad?
dipping around my dad.
Yeah. But she's just like, hey, do you want to come swimming with me? And he's like, oh, I didn't bring my swimsuit.
She's like, what's a swimsuit? And he's like, and he's like, okay, well, she's like, I'm getting out now. And he's like, okay, I'll turn my back. But like, then they have this whole conversation. She puts on her new dress, which actually does expose her arms. And it's, I don't know, it's like actually not
It's the most boring dress
It's the most
of the
boring
film.
dress fucking ever.
It's a bit Grecian, in my opinion.
It
It is
is?
Grecian, but it's also like, it's so boring.
Yeah, it's very
compared
plain.
to everything else.
Even with the string of emeralds around her neck.
Yeah. She's like, I had this made especially for you. Don't you like it? Blah, blah. I don't even remember how most of this conversation
It's
goes.
insipid.
But it's clear that for somehow, some way, they're falling in love. And well, actually, he accuses her of being like... So he had accused her in the last scene where he's chewing her out of being like weirdly like cold and inhuman. This seems to be a theme in the 1950s and 1960s of like accusing these beautiful women of being cold and inhuman for basically any reason.
Yeah.
It's like if you don't show interest in a man, you're cold and inhuman.
But if you do show interest in a man, you're a slut.
If you show interest in the wrong man, you're cold and inhuman. Like, there's just, I don't know,
Yeah.
like, this
You
is
can't
a
win.
theme, but,
You're a
that
woman
I've
in the
noticed.
50s and you can't win.
Yeah, you're a woman in the 50s, you'll never win. But now that she's dressed, like, a little bit nicer and she's giving the captain attention, he's warming up to her, and they end up kissing. I don't know.
And she likes this one,
and
I
she
guess.
likes this one, I guess. And they fall in love. And he pretty much immediately, upon coming back inside after talking to her, pretty immediately is like, yep, well, there's now a complication. I want that woman with me. And his doctor friend is just like,
Yeah, all right.
okay, yeah, sure. I'm sure that's not gonna
Cause any problems.
cause any problems.
No.
And he hasn't expressed this to Alta yet, although apparently, as the movie progresses, this is just somehow they
There's
both...
an unspoken
this
knowledge between the two
Yeah,
of
this
them.
unspoken agreement that, like, of course I'll go and marry you, first man that I've seen beside my father.
This movie is a really strange combination of, like, for the time, extremely innovative approach to science fiction depictions, and like there's good humor tossed in there and really engaging visuals.
Well,
But-
it claims in the beginning there's sort of this expositionary introductory voiceover that seems to say
Well,
that
men
this
and
is an
women,
yeah.
men and women both colonized the solar system and beyond.
Yeah, it seems to intimate a kind of egalitarian government, although
That is
So-
not reflected anywhere
yeah,
else.
that's not reflected anywhere else. And you could also say, well, maybe in the 1950s, these filmmakers thought that it's egalitarianism, but for white people. White people only.
What I was going to say was, it has this combination of, really intriguing elements, but just being really tedious at times.
Yeah.
It's an hour 40, but it can feel longer, and I say this as a fan of the film.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't grab you, it's probably not going to, is part of the issue that you're going to work with here. Which I think is what happened to Mitch on watching this.
Yeah. So, anyway, finally, though, after this unspoken agreement between him and Alta is reached after kissing for 1 minute.
Very uncomfortably kissing at that.
Well, it's that 1950s.
It was Hays Code kissing. They can only get so sensual with it.
They didn't have any...
Anyway.
This whole tedious romance is unfolding. The first crewman gets killed, and they're like, okay, this is bullshit. We're going to, instead of just going and talking to Morbius, we're going to break into his office and figure out what he's up to. They do this. The captain takes a brief aside to go make out with Alta again, and her pet tiger tries to murder them, so he has to laser it out of the air.
They have a pet tiger for
In
some
space,
reason.
of course.
Well, all the animals love her because she's a space Disney princess.
Yeah.
Which, honestly, I don't hate that.
I don't hate that, but whatever. So then they go and...
They break into Morbin Time's office.
And Morbius catches them. A false wall opens up to reveal a tunnel, and he steps out of it, and he's like, well, fuck. I guess it's time to come clean then.
Or, basically, he's just like... Oh, well, are you going to rob me? The fine china is in the kitchen and whatever.
Yeah, he's shady as fuck. But
Yeah, he's
he throws the shade.
Yeah, the entire time. But he's also just like, okay, fine. If you want to know what I'm working on, follow me. And he shows them basically alien space laboratory. Here are instruments measuring just incredible, inconceivable amounts of energy that all these things could channel, and... Here's the weird
Here's
brain...
how smart they are.
Yeah, here's how smart they were, because here's this, weird brain training device that was a toy for their children, but they could, manifest 3D images from their minds, but if a regular human uses it, they'll die.
Yeah. It's very difficult.
Except for me, because I'm so smart and special that when I used it, it made me twice as smart.
And I already had 182 IQ.
He's super special, big pants boy. But he basically gives them the grand tour of, here's this alien tech. It's capable of harnessing just ungodly amounts of energy. It can project that energy wirelessly to any spot on the surface of the planet. This becomes relevant later. And then he walks them through basically the Disneyland monorail through all, the 20-mile cube of power plant that is juicing this place up. And they're like, well, holy shit, that's incredible. And he's like, yes, and the aliens that built this are on the verge of some grand discovery before their civilization vanished.
Yeah.
They were called the Krell.
Yeah?
Yeah. They're like, okay, cool, but, what is killing our people?
Yeah, and he's just like, well, there was, some strange force that... And he doesn't give any straight answers, really. But they do buy that he's not killing them.
Yeah, they're like, okay, it's not possible that you went and killed our crewmate. But they also are like, look, the technology that you're describing, the records that you are looking through, I mean, they're...
The people of Earth could use this.
Yeah, the people of Earth could use this. This technology is incredible.
Well, yeah, it's millennia ahead of whatever humanity can achieve.
Yeah.
The big brain-o-maker. You could share this to the rest of the world so everyone else could get smart.
Can get big-brained. But this is an interesting ethical dilemma that I wish they'd spent a little bit more time on.
Yeah, because it's very much like a B or C or D plot.
Yeah, because they're like, hey, we need to bring this back to Earth with us, because since the technology is here and it's been discovered, we should distribute it. We should put it into use. And Morbius is like, having seen and studied this technology, even, just a fraction of this technology, no, we're not ready for it.
Well, it's capable of such tremendous power that I don't think humanity is responsible enough to use it.
And I will use my personal specific judgment to decide what to give to Earth and when. And this is an interesting ethical dilemma, I think, because both sides are kind of right. Yeah, humanity probably couldn't handle all that technology all at once.
Think about it, this script is being written in light of the bomb.
Yes.
Like, it's a one-to-one comparison.
And at the same time, it's not really okay for one
person
man
to have that choice.
who has his own biases and his own, like, flawed judgment to determine when all this stuff reaches other people. It kind of makes me think...
Ozymandias?
No, not Ozymandias, but I'm going to try not to go on a tangent here. But it makes me think of Iron Man.
Oh, yeah.
And not first movie Iron Man, because I liked him.
He's pretty chill.
But all of the other movies that Iron Man was in, this makes me think of him and his relationship with the technology that he had. Where it's like, yeah, you have all this crazy, powerful technology.
Why aren't you helping people?
Why aren't you
you have a 3D
more
printer
directly,
that can make super robots. Why aren't you making, like,
you
prosthetic limbs
you
en
have
masse?
an arc power generator thingy. Why don't you
Solve all the
world's
problems.
energy problems? You're a fucking billionaire. You could do this so many times over.
But no, we need a suit of armor.
But no,
around the world.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, we need another paternalistic white guy making choices for everybody.
Exactly.
Again.
A paternalistic, alcoholic, womanizing, billionaire, daddy issue white guy.
Oh, so you mean like our current leadership in real life? Not just him, but also him.
Yeah. So at the same time, even if people at large are a danger to share this with, having one person control the keys to the kingdom.
Who died and made you president?
Is
everybody else on the planet
who died and made you God. And so he and this guy, like Morbius, he wants to play God. Like that is he sees nothing wrong with that. So anyway, there's this thing that they kind of talk about once and then they forget about, and we don't talk about it again.
Well, there's like a very brief mention right at the end as the plot's wrapping up.
Yeah.
But this is the third night, so of course things must escalate with the monster once more. So they've got their energy fence thing, which totally worked great the last time. But now they've got, like, energy Gatling guns. Also,
where do they keep getting all this big equipment from this tiny spaceship?
It's funny because, like, the ship is relatively small. It's maybe the size of a 7-Eleven, maybe.
Yeah.
But they keep pulling out this gigantic ass equipment, and it's like, where were you guys storing?
Like, they're literally taking apart 2/3 of their ship to make a radio to
make a space radio.
To make a space radio to talk to Earth. So where the fuck are they getting all this other stuff?
I don't know.
They also had, like, this cute little truck, like, tow truck, magnetized tow truck. And so early on, they were, like, moving some of this equipment to build the space radio. And, like, as a gag, they just attached one of the dudes to it. And
it was the cook.
It was the cook?
It was comic relief cook.
Oh, no.
They're like, oh, he's got a metal spoon in his pocket. Check this out.
And they just drove off with him, and... yeah.
They didn't drive very fast. Yeah, I know.
Okay.
This is like the big confrontation with the Beast. And honestly, this is kind of cool. So they have the Gatling guns pointed, they have the energy shields, they're all like standing at the ready with their little pew-pews. The Beast approaches and they can't see it, and they're like, what's going on? Are our sensors wrong? And then it hits the energy barrier, and we get like this glowing silhouette of like neon craziness.
Allow me, dear listeners, to
please
describe what you are seeing. The invisible energy monster looks like a cross between a flaming meatball and the bulldog from Tom and Jerry.
Holy shit, you're right. It's even got the bow-legged thing going on.
Yeah, but it's a biped.
With talons and shit.
It's very fascinatingly weird looking, and it also stomps two dudes, and... potentially eats a third?
Yeah, so second in command's like, I don't hold it against you, Captain. She picked the right man. I'm like, you both suck. Yeah,
it's Jerry. It's the guy who's hitting on Alta, and again, like, it's just like, apparently by unspoken agreement, the Captain and Alta are I guess, like, getting hitched. Again, there has never been an official conversation here, but he's just decided that's happening. So he talks to Jerry, and he's like, yeah, I hope there's no hard feelings. And he's like, that's okay, Cap. You're the right man.
But as if we can discuss... because Jerry's about to fucking die.
Yeah.
Which, thank God.
If anything you can learn from Frozen, you can't marry a man you just met.
Yeah, that went so well. The big pew-pews that they got out, the Gatling pew-pews, managed to repel the creature somehow, which doesn't make a lot of sense given what we see later on. But they're like, okay, that's it. Tomorrow, we're basically going to raid Morbius's alien space lab. And we're going to...
And we're gonna take Alta.
We're going to take Alta, because she wants to come with us anyway, obviously.
And the doctor, if needs must, against his own will.
Yeah, because they're like, we need to get off this planet, shit's going down, which... Fair's fair.
Yeah.
Shit's going down, they need to get off this planet.
And we also need to make our brains big.
I mean, they're like,
they have a lot of problems that they can't solve very easily, so I guess they're gonna go...
Yeah, the doctor's gonna go sit in the brain zappinator and see if he can't, like, salvage some of this alien tech before they have to evacuate the planet. So they get in there, Robbie is standing guard, and immediately deactivates their space phasers, which is hilarious, because he's just like, oh, you want to shoot? Too bad. Bzzz. But then Alta has to basically use a backdoor command to get him to, chill out and stop guarding the door and let them in.
It's like, okay.
Yeah, Robbie's just like immediately like, oh, alright, fine. The doctor goes back and sneaks into Morbius's lab, presumably to use the brain embiggenator.
While the captain and Alta are doing some more sappy love.
It's not even well
it's not even,
stuff.
There's no feeling in it, really.
There's no feeling, there's no chemistry.
No, there's not. It's the chemistry of two cold fish being slapped against each other.
It's the chemistry of, like, well, here's a man and here is a woman, so it has to work, right?
It's sexy.
That's all you need, right?
Well, it's the chemistry of a high school production of Romeo and Juliet, but both the leads are gay.
See, I was gonna say Alta, kind of struck me as very, like, ace, because when Jerry's, like, kissing her, she's just like
nothing. Not good, not bad, just completely.
Yeah, she's just
indifferent.
like, okay, like,
and I think she has
guess
a
that was
romantic interest in
okay.
the captain, but I don't know if it extends to anything bodily necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, we're always commenting on the
sexuality,
the sexuality or the gender identity of characters
because it's fun and they're not real.
Yeah, but
don't do that to real people. That's gross.
Yeah.
Is it a better love story than Twilight?
I don't know. It might be on par.
See, at least Twilight there was more meat on that bone. It was rotten meat.
Yeah.
But there was more. This is just the bone.
Yeah.
There's like nothing on here.
Yeah.
You do want to know what a good romance is. Cook and Robbie.
They literally had more chemistry than the captain.
They keep having these cutaways where they're just like palling around and like apparently getting drunk together, which I didn't know Robbie could get drunk, but clearly that happened. Lord knows. I don't care to speculate what they got up to.
Lord knows what happened.
After the questioning of the robot's gender and the oil jobs, like...
Well, and he says something too about what they got up
Having
to.
a heart-to-heart or something.
Yeah, there was
the phrasing was
the phrasing
really
was like,
something.
What did you do, Cookie? Like, what did you and Robbie get up to, huh?
Yeah. So at this critical moment, Morbius shows up and he's like, "What are you doing with my daughter?" And she's like, "I love him, Dad." And
I'm going with him.
Well, she basically does the Pocahontas for John Smith thing of like, "No, Father, this one is mine, and you can't hurt him."
And he's
except
like, you
much
naughty,
poorer
naughty
executed.
child, you will be punished for this, because she's like, well, I'm just gonna leave. I'm just gonna go. By the way, not a moment before, the doctor has come back from getting his brain embiggened, and he's dying.
Yeah, he's being carried by Robbie.
Yeah, and he's like, the doctor, he was just too close to see it. The Krell, they managed to achieve their dream of becoming immaterial beings.
Well, no, sorry. That wasn't the dream. The dream was to be able to manifest anything that they thought about.
Yeah.
Like, we don't need tools or anything to achieve our great works anymore. We can just think about it and it is.
And it will. It's like hard light projection from your brain. But what they didn't understand was the monsters of the id.
Dead.
And so this happens. The captain's friend has just fucking died in front of him.
Well, and Morbius is just like, serves him right, the dumb asshole, basically.
But we're still having this drama of, like...
I love him, Father.
I love him, Daddy, and there's nothing you can do about that. And she's like, I'm just gonna leave. Because you're being so, like, mean right now or something. And he's like, oh, you naughty child, you'll be punished for that. And meanwhile, the captain is like, okay, well, monsters of the id. What is the id?
What's an id?
Finally, Morbius is like, well, I mean, whatever. The id is just like a psychological principle of, the subconscious.
It's an outdated notion of the subconscious.
Yeah, the subconscious, the feral beast inside every man, or whatever.
Something very dramatic.
And the monster that attacked the ship
is now going to attack the house.
Coming to attack the house.
Yeah, Robbie's like, oh, I detect life form.
Yeah, something is approaching.
Bop, bop, boop, boop.
And so, they're freaking out, rightfully so. They have nowhere to run but deeper into, like, basically back to the brain embiggening room. They run in there. They're continuing this argument, and eventually the captain is like, don't you see, Dr. Morbius? When you had your brain embiggened in the brain embiggening machine, your subconscious, your id, entered into this, like, energy matrix, and you are creating this monster.
Yeah, he was like, the Krell destroyed themselves because they didn't know that all their worst impulses were basically going to be manifested, and now it's happening to you.
And now it's happening to you. That's why all your crewmates died, because you were mad at them for voting to leave when you wanted to stay. Mm-hmm. And that's why Alta is now not safe, because you're angry.
You're mad at her, too.
You're angry at her
for
choosing another man.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well, and for defying you.
Yeah.
It was his phrase, I think. And it's like, and even despite your better judgment, there's a part of you that's still mad at her for that, and that part of you is coming to kill her.
That part of you is coming through that door right now. And so, in this supposedly dramatic moment...
Which is mostly just, like, kind of overly drawn out.
Yeah, Dr. Morbius is like, no, I'm guilty, I killed them all! And it's like, get a hold of yourself, man!
Yeah, basically.
And so Morbius goes and confronts the monster, and he's like, I deny you! And apparently this works?
Yeah,
apparently on his subconscious? Made manifest?
So the way I interpret this is, like, there was a conflict between his subconscious wanting to do harm to the people behind him and the fact that he was standing in the way. It was sort of like
the Robbie short-circuiting.
Yeah, it's like, I have this, like, weird conflict of things that I want to do. I have a paradox, and apparently that psychic load...
It's a self-terminating paradox.
Yeah, the psychic load dismisses the monster and also, like, fatally wounds the doctor.
Yeah, for some reason. For some reason, he starts dying.
Now that you said that actually makes sense, and I wish that they kind of explored it and explained it a little bit better.
Well, see, that's the thing about this movie. Like, it's got a lot of really juicy bits that I like, but it could use some editing, and I feel like it could use, like, kind of a fresh approach. Apparently, they tried to remake it in 2007, and for whatever reason, it just didn't go through. But I think this could really effectively be remade as, like, a suspense horror, because... There are parts of this that could be genuinely scary if you framed it correctly.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So, yeah, we have this scene where...
like, Alta, like, so Dr. Morbius is dying. And
Alta's
also
just
runs over and she's like, oh no!
Yeah, just, like, very tepid.
It's almost disappointing, like, oh no, Dad.
Yeah.
You're dying.
Well, that sucks. Golly gee.
But now I have the captain, my one true love, who I met 2 days ago.
It's been 3.
3 days ago.
But in his dying moments, Morbius basically directs the captain to set off the self-destruct in the machine, because he's like...
He didn't actually explain...
But he doesn't explain that it's the self-destruct until after the captain has completed the sequence.
Yeah, he's like, I'd rather fucking destroy this entire planet than let any of Earth have any of its technologies.
Fairness, I would probably make the same decision, because, like, this is something that makes your nightmares real. Nobody needs this.
Yeah. I mean, I see it. But I'm also like, there were other technologies that could have genuinely been quite helpful.
Yes.
I think that, of course, the whole argument is, well, humans need to get there on their own, and they need to struggle and strive and make mistakes and find
Learn
their
for
way.
themselves and hopefully do better next time.
Yeah, and with this story about how your subconscious can destroy you, maybe in 20,000 years, when we're at that point, we won't make that same mistake.
Because we'll definitely remember that
Because
this happened
because we can definitely remember what happened.
in 18,000 BC.
Yeah. Checks out.
Yeah. So this happens, and not much is made of the evacuation from the planet. It just cuts to...
Somehow they figured out how to get off the planet.
They're 100 million miles away.
Probably because they had Robbie the robot.
Yeah, like, so there's this... the most suspenseful moment in the film for me is where Robbie is ordered to attack the Beast, but he can't because Robbie recognizes that the Beast is a part of the Professor. And so that's an order to hurt a human being, and he shorts out, and like...
And you're like, oh no, is he gonna die?
Did Robbie die? No, Robbie's fine. Robbie gets his justice. It's okay. He gets to pilot the ship while they're escaping. It's great. He's clearly having fun. And
back to his sassy self.
Back to his sassy self. And so they're on their way back to Earth. Alta's on board. And then they watch the planet blow up.
Yeah, he's like comforting
He's like
her.
weirdly like holding her, and they're both watching the planet explode.
He's like, yep, everything you have ever known, it's about to blow up in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
including your dad's corpse.
And he's also like really smiley about
Yeah,
it.
he's
really
weirdly got this smug smirk. This is
like,
gross. I hate it. And he's like, well, and he's like,
And she's clearly upset.
yeah, because, you know, her dad just died and his corpse got exploded.
And her, literally the
pretty
only
metal.
life she's ever known and the only planet she's ever
and
known.
all of her animal companions.
Yeah, they're all, it's all gone. And he's just over there like, yep, it's gone. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, boom!
But I got some pussy, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and he's like, well, you know, in like 20,000 years, people will, he tries to comfort her by being like, you know, people
Don't remember
will...
your dad's bad example and try to be better.
And I was like, this is the worst pep talk ever. This is the worst thing to fucking say to your grieving, I guess, fucking fiance. And also, you brought her, you were cautioning her about,
now she's
like,
on an enclosed space with no escape for about a year.
for about a year with all these men that you were worried about.
Hey, at least there's only 15 of them now.
That's true. A couple of them died, and now Robbie's here.
Yeah, so he'll protect her, but also I'm just like, this is just...
Yeah.
Wait,
I
Robbie,
don't think this is the uplifting ending
It's
that
really
you guys
not.
thought it was.
would Robbie actually protect her though?
Yes, I bet he would.
Well, he can't hurt people, but he can stop them.
Yeah,
He
he
can
can't...
just like fabricate a wall between their room.
Or just, like,
and-
hold them, because he's strong enough to lift 10 tons. So you can just
yeah.
grab them and hold them.
Yeah.
And be like, I'm going to hold you until you stop.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. Or, you know, if they have any weapons, he can just disable those weapons. Like he has non-violent ways of stopping
Yeah.
stuff.
Just stand in the doorway.
Well, that's how he solves problems earlier in the movie. And that's Forbidden Planet, for better and for
That's
worse.
Forbidden Planet. Yeah. On a weird level, I feel like it's kind of the same dread you feel at the end of Alien, where it's like, yep, she got away.
But at what cost?
At what cost? And that's Alta. I'm like, girl, you got off this planet where you were isolated, but you just, like, now you're with this fucking asshole who's, like, smarmily smug about your dad,
Dying.
yeah, being an example
Yeah.
for what not to do.
It's not great.
I don't know. And it just, like, I was like, for a utopia, this is feeling very,
Gross.
yeah. For a utopic vision.
Sorry.
And clearly women are not, like, equal here.
Mm-hmm.
I just started thinking about, like, you don't have to keep this in, but just having the sleeping quarters on the rim that's spinning on this, and so you're just centrifuging people.
It's like when you're in the carnival ride.
Oh my god, the
And you just-
Gravitron.
You just sleep like that.
Yes.
That's how you sleep.
At least the girl gets spewed out the windows.
What? open windows are there on a spacecraft?
There's open windows on the trucks.
No, Mitch, we've been over this.
Anyway, is it time for dessert?
Please, God.
Well, are there any vital statistics that you want to add?
I mean, I've already held forth a lot on sort of the first that this movie created. And honestly, like, it is foundational to the sci-fi genre.
Yeah.
To this day, a lot of its, like, spec-fic elements that it plays in, they still hold up. There's some interesting ideas here.
Yeah.
Because it was the first crack at it, it was not done well. Because your first time doing anything isn't going to be perfect.
Yeah.
It's still pretty entertaining. There's some very tiresome and uncomfortable things that you may want to skip entirely, and that's okay.
Honestly, if you just turned off the sound and the subtitles and just watched it,
Well, then you'd miss the amazing soundtrack.
you would miss the soundtrack. Okay, well, just like mostly zone out and just watch it for the aesthetics.
Well, yeah, just chapter skip over the gross bits.
Yeah.
If there's one thing I could say for this movie is that it could use some editing, and it probably could chop down to a TOS episode.
It really could. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I've seen this plot line at least either on TOS or even on Twilight Zone.
I mean, yeah, well, they actually reused some of, like, so they reused the space truck. Robbie showed up in some Twilight Zone episodes. They reused the spacesuits in the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Robbie reappeared in multiple television shows and, like, commercials and other movies and shit. So, like...
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he's in Gremlins.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
He's, like, in the mall at the end or something.
No. He's talking to
Oh,
the
he's
dad.
he's at the invention convention. Yeah.
And he's all, like, trying
he's,
to
like,
get
on a payphone.
Yeah, he's trying to get the dad off the payphone.
Aww.
But yeah, like, so this movie sent out huge ripples, and rightly
Yeah.
so, because it did some really cool stuff.
Well, and it might seem passe to us now, but only because it literally
Wrote the
defined
book.
the
Yeah.
tropes that have become tropes.
Yeah,
like,
that have become essentially so tired at this point.
Yeah.
but they were brand new
It's
there.
like, oh, why does every high fantasy feel like Lord of the Rings?
Well,
Yeah.
because Lord of the Rings basically invented the genre.
yeah.
It's kind of like how we look back at Seinfeld today and we're
Well,
like,
it's not funny.
that's not that funny. Like, or I've heard this joke a million times. Well, that's because the joke was new.
Well, it sort of made the modern sitcom.
Yeah. So anyway, that's Forbidden Planet. Again, trigger warning, it's the 1950s.
And
Or
all that implies,
yeah.
except the racism.
content warning,
Unimplied.
1950s. And
Like,
there is
the
no
only-
active racism
Yeah, the
simply because there are
There are no people of color in this
which is
film.
also a problem.
It's a special
Yeah.
kind of passive racism.
Yeah.
But there's no racist acts in the film.
Yeah, there's no racist language or acts, but it's
Because there's simply no minorities
because
in the film.
there's no minorities in the future.
That's dark.
Hella dark. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, but like that's implied.
Yeah. Let's move on to the dessert round.
Yeah. Do you want to go first?
I mean, yeah, as today's host, I feel like
Yeah.
maybe I should go first. So, honestly, I don't know what I can say that I haven't already said, because I've been gushing about the impact this movie has had on media since
But how
before
has it-
we started.
Affected you personally?
Well, like I said in the intro, mid-century sci-fi is near and dear to my heart. And a lot of that does have to do with, like, a lot of modern media feels the necessity to be, like, really grim and gritty.
Yeah.
And, like, bleak. And I don't really have much interest in stories like that. I don't mind stories that are dark. I don't mind stories where bad and horrible things happen. But you have to have hope at the end, because for me, there's really just not much of a point to...
Well, like, you just don't want to feel
Watching.
like shit. You
Yeah,
know? Like, you don't want trauma porn.
Yeah, I don't consume media to feel bad. I don't look for everything I consume to have a capital M message, but I don't know, just a hopeful vision of the future or something. Weirdly, like, this is a bit of a weird tangent. It's still in the sci-fi space, but that's kind of why I like the film Underwater, because
Yeah.
like, it is extremely stressful. it's a horror movie. Really bad things happen constantly. But it does end in hope because there are survivors.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you gotta have, like, some kind of palate cleanser at the end of all that grimness. That's just my sensibility. And this movie, poorly, attempts at that in like, oh, well, now we go into the future and I have a hot new wife from space.
Yeah.
But
the whole
the
genre
as a
it
whole,
founded.
Yeah, it's like, well, in the future, we have achieved incredible things. We haven't nuked ourselves into oblivion, because that was the pall that was over the entirety of the mid-century.
Yeah.
And a little bit now, though not as much. We're worried about other kinds of threats now. But just the idea that humanity can come together to solve their problems. Because the underpinning of a lot of these is like, you know, the Federation of Planets, or like...
Yeah. We can work together.
Yeah.
And we can go far.
Yeah. And I miss stories that didn't feel embarrassed to be optimistic.
Yeah. Embarrassed to be earnest.
Yeah. It reminds me of a quote that I've said recently. I can't remember where it originated. But it very much typifies my feelings on, like, you know, post-2000 media. Not all pessimism is deep, and not all optimism is dumb.
Yeah.
Like, there is room in the world for thoughtful optimism, and pessimism is just kind of self-defeating. Like, if you assume the worst is going to happen, then you guarantee it will.
Yeah.
I do miss that hopeful tone in my stories. We don't have a lot of that because it has become really popular to be like, oh, everything is terrible, and terrible is realistic, because that's the only part that's...
And you're a child if you
think otherwise.
Yeah.
Like this black-pilled bullshit.
Well, and it's so strange because now it's this weird thing where we don't let children consume dark media anymore. Like Labyrinth and Dark Crystal, there's some pretty dark themes in there.
Yeah.
There's some pretty disturbing things. Matilda. But that helps prepare children in a safe way for how difficult life can be. But now children can only consume optimistic media, but then as soon as they become adults, we're like, stop believing that. That's childish. You can't make the world a better place, even though that's what we told you for your entire childhood. And don't even try. Even children who grew up with, like, the media that tried to help prepare us for the challenges that we would face in adult life, this is still a hellscape.
Yeah. Well, it's like, you know, joy is only for children and misery is only for adults. Yeah. And the only kind of humor you can have is irony, because that's the cool kind.
And there's and give up hope, because that's the thing. Even with media that teaches children how to handle some pretty dark topics, the message is still hope. Hope that you can get through it. You are tough enough and smart enough, and with help, you can conquer this problem. You can get through it. But we tell the second somebody turns 18, we're like, hope is for dummies.
Yeah.
Hope is an illusion.
Yeah.
A delusion.
And, like, unfortunately, a lot of the optimism of these sort of mid-century films is couched in, like, American jingoistic, like, can do because we're America kind of attitudes. But you still come away with things can be done to make things better.
Well, and just because it had a lot of that shit in there doesn't mean that we can't,
we don't have to throw it out wholesale.
Yeah, as modern people, that we can't separate the two and iterate upon that hope and take it in a more progressive, updated direction, which is actually what, like, new Star Trek tries to do.
Honestly, that's more of a commentary on this genre that the film comes from in general. In fairness, this film kind of made the genre, so things that you say about the genre are true about the film too. When it comes to this specific movie, things that influence me, Robbie, obviously.
Yay.
I love me a sassy robot. I like to see them in all of my media. Please more.
Yeah.
I have a character in our upcoming podcast, Route 6.6, that is part... Like, I didn't realize it at the time, but is obvious now, partly inspired by Robbie.
Yeah.
Again, we've got the ray gun gothic, big bubbly laser pistols, like...
Theremins.
the theremin. I don't think they used any true theremins. I think they used all synthesizers in this. I think the theremins were used later. But just all the trappings of this era of filmmaking in terms of like aesthetics and music, I love, and has made a very deep impression on me.
Well, honestly, I mean, the takeaway that I have is essentially quite close to yours. I wouldn't say that this is probably going to influence me in my writing or anything like that. Yeah.
In fact, most of the writing of this I would can. The concepts keep, but just rewrite the whole thing.
Yeah. And I do love me a good ray gun gothic film. But I think my takeaway is the same as yours. I want to see more properly executed, utopic visions, optimistic visions of our future together. That we can save our planet, and that we can save ourselves, and not just save it, make it better. Work together. That's something, having hope and earnestness and joy in media. Joy is not childish. Joy is not, it's not even simple, I guess, if that's, I'm trying to think of like the right word.
Well, a lot of people depict joy as like this frivolous thing, like, oh, I'm happy, but like joy can be this much more fulfilling thing. It can encompass wonder and love and appreciation for the things around you, and
and it's resilience too.
Yeah.
It's not just for children.
It's not just fluff.
It's complex, and just because you have joy, and just because you have a populace that is comfortable and happy and well cared for, doesn't mean that all problems in everybody's lives cease. Like, we will all, in our
And
personal
it doesn't
lives...
mean that you've gone soft.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you've gone soft. We will all have personal problems in our life, challenges that have been around since time immemorial. Someone that you love doesn't love you, or you have a goal that you're having trouble getting to or realizing. Like, those things are never going to go away because that's part of being human. But additionally, as a society, we're always going to have challenges. We're always going to have big questions.
The existential problems.
Scientifically, philosophically. So things like Star Trek, which was very influenced by Forbidden Planet, it kind of shows that future, that we've solved the major problems. There are still adventures to be had.
Well, yeah, and like this movie definitely walked so Star Trek could run, because Gene Roddenberry was like, hey, you know what this movie didn't have? Women and people of color.
Yeah,
and
women
so
and
he
minorities.
put a bunch of those in Star Trek.
Yeah. And
as a very purposeful choice.
And
Yeah.
actual aliens.
And actual aliens, but that's less integral to the point of like, hey, let's actually include people in our
Yeah.
utopian vision of the future.
yeah. And let's actually,
and then later on, like, you know, characters with disabilities and
Yeah.
all sorts.
Well, and each successive generation of Star Trek has seen sort of the blind spots of the previous ones and worked to fill them.
Well, I think it was Next Generation. There was a transgender Klingon.
I mean, there was this whole plot line about a transgender alien person whose society was trying to make them conform to their sex at birth, and they didn't want to be. They were very explicit about people should be able to choose.
Yeah.
And people who are trans deserve love.
Yeah.
And
In
you
light
know,
of what's going on right now, let's reiterate that. Trans people are deserving of love.
yes. And, you know, again, like, people with disabilities weren't really represented in the original series, but then you
in
have
later
Geordi
seasons, yeah.
in The Next Generation.
A main cast member.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, too, because Next Generation also happened in the 90s.
Yeah.
And so, like,
They were,
ahead
They were
of their
up
time,
well, and they were
essentially.
updating as they went on.
yeah, and which is what you should do.
Yeah.
That's what you should do with your ideas. And of course, Discovery and the newer generation of Star Trek, they all include gender nonconforming and
Queer
characters and disabled characters and people of all different
persuasions.
persuasions. And I think we just need so much more of that, because especially after 9/11 here in America, and we set the tone for
lot of
cinema
world media.
around the world and media around the world.
Well, we just wallowed in misery.
Yeah, we just went straight to grimdark, and we are only just now really beginning to claw our way out of that. I mean, you saw things like Juno and Dan in Real Life and stuff like that. First sort of like wave of indie things trying to, like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, that started to climb out of that. But it's taken us so long.
20 odd years.
And there's still people in Hollywood who are trying to make, like, the grimdark thing happen. And I'm like, I'm so over it. Please give me more ridiculous movies like Barbie and Renfield.
Yeah, and the D&D movie, which was...
And the D&D movie? Yeah.
way better than it had any right to be.
Give me that weird
give me
shit.
fun.
Give me that fun shit. And that's just fun for the sake of having fun. And anyway, so this is sort of a long tangent because it's like, this isn't about Forbidden Planet itself, but more about the genre that it inspired. And that I would like, I want to see more hope, more media that centers hope. I'll try my best to do that. Again, like, it's funny, I wouldn't say that I'm like a grim dark writer.
You're not.
I'm not there, but I'm definitely on the
darker end.
the darker end of the spectrum of the content that I write. I get really into the nitty-gritty of, like, personal crisis and trauma and all that jazz.
See the harrowing of Minerva Damson for a taster of that.
Yeah, and really it is a taster because it goes so much deeper. But I'm also trying to work on writing something that's a little bit more hope-centered, that still has the whole, like, interpersonal dynamics of trying to overcome your own personal challenges. I'm experimenting with that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out how to do that myself.
You're putting your dessert into action. You're making your dessert a main course.
Yes. All right, Mitch.
Well, my main takeaway is make things kooky. Make things look very shapy and colorful and have fun with stuff and make your robot snarky. Yeah, all of I have no, like, deep thoughts on this movie because,
You almost fell asleep again?
I almost fell asleep again.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. This wasn't for you. It's not going to be for everybody, trust me.
Yeah, it's okay when something isn't for you.
When I say laborious, like, it felt like a lot of love was put into, like, the scene building and just the special effects, and there was a lot of, like, attention to detail to that stuff.
Yeah, to that point, it was the biggest budget that Hollywood had put towards a science fiction film ever.
Yeah.
And that says something. However,
it's not what you love.
Well, there's
it is a little bloated.
There's a lot of work done, but not really, in my eyes, well.
You don't feel like the payoff was worth it?
Yeah, I'll just put it that way.
And that's a fair critique. Like, there's parts of this movie that are cringy and clunky, and your enjoyment of it is going to be rated entirely on how much you value out of the fun parts versus how much you cringe away from the parts that aren't fun.
Mm-hmm.
How much you can overlook the
warts.
How much you like the 1950s aesthetic and how much you hate the 1950s ethics. Yes.
I will preface this. If you enjoyed The Wrath of Khan, you might not enjoy this movie. However, if you enjoyed the first Star Trek movie, you would definitely enjoy this movie.
Because that one is also a very weirdly
monotonous, paced,
very highfalutin.
Having never seen either of those films, I can't understand the comparison, but I trust you.
But I get it, Mitch. And I agree. That's a great assessment.
I'm not a super Trekkie, but I have seen most of the movies.
You've seen, like, the highlight reel.
Yeah.
So, and I've shown you some of the best episodes of the original series.
Yep.
Amok Time.
Oh my god.
I love Tribbles.
The trouble with Tribbles.
You are a Tribble.
If only our mourning doves sounded like that instead of Anyway, so okay, well,
it's meter time.
It's meter time.
Hamometer.
I mean, it's pretty hammy.
It's hammy, but it's not. It's not well done ham.
Yeah, it's weird because I'm like, I feel like it's not even over the top enough.
It's not.
Like, I would say that the Doctor is, because he goes into, like, almost Shakespearean
Morbius?
soliloquy. Yeah,
Morbius.
Morbius breaches...
But he doesn't do it with, like, the panache.
the same kind of panache.
No, he
yeah.
does not.
Yeah, the acting is all pretty tepid, I would say.
And it's got that delivery that, again, actors in the original series of Star Trek have. That it's very specific,
matter-of-fact.
like, 1950s, 1960s cadences.
Yeah.
I want to say it's a 3.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Just because it's bogged down by the
yeah,
pacing
it's
and everything.
bogged down by everything else.
That's fair.
Breaking it down. 1 point for Robbie.
Yeah.
1 point for the cook. 1 point for the Ed monster because that was kind of hammy. Like compared to
Yeah.
everything else, that was very just out there.
It is the most especially the scene where it collides with the energy barrier and
Yes.
you see the shape of it.
Yes.
It's very
It's very
Saturday
Looney
morning
Tune.
cartoon. Yeah. we
Like I said,
we both reached for it.
Like I said, a meatball on fire that looks like the bulldog from Tom and Jerry.
Yeah.
That is what I am seeing, and that is what everybody is shooting very tepidly at.
Yeah, like
But like, there's no recoil with these guys. Okay.
okay.
Whatever.
This was the first time they had tried to like do a good render of laser
energy
pistols on
weapons,
film.
yeah.
And for the time, they did pretty well.
Yeah.
Like it hasn't aged badly.
Yeah.
There's some 80s movies that have aged worse than this.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
That said, there's not a lot of impact to the
Nope.
use of the weapons.
So the cheesometer,
Uh-huh.
the chisometer.
Chisometer.
I don't know. I think that so it's cheesy because it's like 50s sci-fi, right? It's pulp.
Yeah.
So I feel like that automatically puts it into like the 5 range.
So, may I suggest, think about what you would rate TOS, and then subtract a couple points. Because,
So TOS is, well, I mean, that's probably it. Because
Yeah.
TOS would probably be like a 7 or an 8
yeah,
on the cheesiness. Ah, so good. That is a ham and cheese sandwich.
it really is.
TOS is the original series of Star Trek.
Yes.
Yes.
With a little side of beef periodically.
Yeah, with a hunk of beef occasionally. Or all the time, because Spock is there, babe. Babe.
But Sulu.
But
Yeah, Sulu.
He was the most ripped of the,
I know,
of
but
the
like,
team.
but Spock is, he's...
Just goes completely ham and just haha,
They
fencing.
never capitalized on how hot Spock was.
Well, the fandom did.
The fandom really did. They literally invented modern fandom.
Yeah, they soaked their spandex over that for a long time.
Anyway, so yeah, I'd say like a 5.
Yeah,
A 5 on the
that's fair.
cheese-o-meter.
That's fair.
So the beef-o-meter?
Oh, God. Like a
The
2.
beef-o-matic?
Beef eater.
Okay, well, in fairness, like, so is the beef-o-meter inclusive of women?
I feel like it should. I feel
It
like it
should.
should be.
Yeah.
I mean, she is a babe.
She is a babe. You know, the rest of the movie is so, like, because the men are so gross, it definitely, like, contributes negative beef points to it.
Yeah,
It's
because like that is
this
so
is,
not
like,
sexy.
Yeah.
And-
This is like a gross rendition of sexuality that is off-putting.
Yeah. And because of that, I don't think we have much sauce either. I don't think it's very saucy.
No, it's not. All of the romantic interactions are very wooden.
Yeah, fall
Oh
fall
my
flat.
God. The only saucy thing that was...
It's pretty dry.
Yeah, the only saucy thing
Dry.
is definitely the whiskey that Robbie was bringing to the party.
Honestly,
Yeah.
Robbie and the cook were
Robbie is
saucier
the
than the rest of the
sauciest.
cast.
Yes. So maybe there's
Robbie and that cook.
there's
that
a 2
plot romance.
there's a 2 on out of 10 sauciness.
I would do a 2.5 for the beef, and all the points are Alta.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she would have gotten more
She has
points.
very pretty eyes.
She
And
does.
very pretty thighs. That got this movie banned in Spain, I'll reiterate.
She also has like, aside from the stupid Grecian outfit, all of her other outfits are on point.
incredible. Like, I'm pretty sure
Her
she had
cute
her
little
own,
mini dresses.
I'm pretty sure she had her own dedicated costume designer. Like, all the men's outfits were one costume designer.
Yeah.
And Alta by herself was a separate costume designer.
Yeah.
And you can see the separate, like, design sensibilities.
Well, because she's a lady, she has to have a wardrobe change.
She can't just
Every
look like
scene.
every single,
know-
like, astronaut dude.
You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of the original Creature from the Black Lagoon. Because that
Yeah.
movie also has the one woman who is mostly just there to change outfits every scene.
And be the object of desire.
Yes.
And cause fights between man and beast.
See, I prefer, I prefer Shape of Water compared to, you know...
Well, again,
Creature of
the first time you try anything is not going to be the best.
Yeah. The first time something is attempted is probably actually not going to be the best because it will have blind spots. It will have flaws.
Like Jake from Adventure Time once said, sucking at something is the first steps of being halfway decent at something.
Yeah. Of getting good, scrub.
And it's fair to rate this movie harshly, but as sort of a foundational text, keep in mind, dear listener, how did your first time go? Was it awkward?
For anything.
Was it awkward and ungainly? Did you learn a lot from it to do better next time? Just bear that in mind.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that probably does it. I think we can start
Cleaning up.
clearing the table.
Yep.
Is this a Sir, this is a Wendy's because it takes itself so seriously?
Well, I think though that like I don't think that would be fair
It's
because I think
'Cause it is
it
a
had
founder.
to take itself seriously.
Yeah.
At the time, sci-fi was derided
Well,
as
it's not fair to call this a B film because it wasn't treated as one.
yeah,
They were trying to treat it as a main release.
yeah. It was
And it was.
they were
In fact, I read that when they released the rough cut to test audiences, the test audiences loved it so much they didn't edit anything before the final release.
wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
They were just like, no, print it. We gotta go.
yeah.
That makes sense.
Gotta get it
because
out there.
'Cause it was so
the
fresh.
pacing- The pacing was weird. That's why.
But it was so,
Makes sense.
but it was so fresh at the time that people were just like, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And it took
Yeah.
the premise seriously in a way that up until that point it really hadn't.
Yeah.
So I don't think you could say that this, like, by our standards now, you could say, sir, this is a Wendy's,
Yeah,
maybe.
as a modern viewer.
But in the context under which it was made, no, this is,
Yeah, like, it was a banquet
Serious.
thing because it was
Yeah.
serving so much fresh and new. Maybe a good metaphor for it is like one of those boomer restaurants that was really good when your parents were teenagers.
Yeah.
But like, it's changed ownership a couple times now, and a lot of it comes out of the microwave.
yeah.
But it
and-
used to be really
well,
good.
Or maybe it's like, at the time, our parents went wild over having, or our grandparents went wild over having, like, oranges all year round.
Mm-hmm.
But we're just not impressed by that now.
Yeah.
Like, you know? So, yeah.
Is this a random Jello mold?
It might be one of those like mid-50s Jello molds where it's like they're suspending like Spam and tuna in the Jello, and they're like,
They
this
were
is hot
experimenting
shit.
with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And everybody was like, wow,
Yeah, it's
I've
like that.
never tasted this before, so it's cool. And now we're just like,
Oh
whoa,
my god,
buddy.
what did you do? It's
No.
a little bit of that. A little bit of that.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead and put the dishes in the sink. Kind of wind down for the evening. Thank you for going on this journey with us,
To the Forbidden
listener,
Planet.
to the Forbidden Planet, and back in time, but also
Forward.
forward in time
Mm-hmm.
on this journey. Yes. Loved having you here with us. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any thoughts about Forbidden Planet, please share them with us on our Instagram or any of the other social media outlets that we may establish in the future.
I might need to make us a Tumblr.
Or a Reddit. That would
Yeah.
be, yeah. Anyway, so
We'll let you know.
we'll let you know, and we would love to hear from you. If you can think of anybody else who might enjoy the madness that we are serving up almost weekly, go ahead and send them a link. We'd be happy to have them, and we will see you again next weekish, and we'll save you a seat.